Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving into something that's, well, fundamental, really. Abstract vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about words like justice, freedom, integrity,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're absolutely essential.
Absolutely.
But sometimes getting a real grip on them feels a bit slippery,
Mm-hmm.
like trying to hold water.
That's a really good way to put it. I mean, unlike a word like chair, where you can see it, touch it,
Right.
abstract words, they represent ideas, qualities, things
Right.
that are more, in our heads conceptually.
Exactly. And we've been looking over this really fascinating piece, Abstract Vocabulary Development, Embodied Theory and Practice. It's from the Educational Psychology Review.
Yeah, it's a great review.
It really digs into how we learn these, let's say, trickier words. And it suggests it's not just about cracking open a dictionary.
Not at all.
So our kind of mission today is to pull out the key insights, the really valuable stuff from this review. Hopefully give everyone a clearer picture of how abstract vocabulary develops and maybe, offer some fresh perspectives on learning itself.
And what's really interesting, I think, is how the article moves beyond just the language aspect. It explores this idea that understanding these words is deeply connected to our bodies, our experiences.
Also, like how we feel, move.
Yeah, exactly. How we feel, how we move, what we sense. It's suggesting a much more grounded basis for these abstract ideas.
Okay, right. Let's try and unpack that a bit. Abstract vocabulary, obviously, it's vital. You can't really engage in, say, academic discussion or complex professional talk without it.
It's the bedrock of complex thought, really.
But the article seems to highlight that we don't always have a clear picture of how we actually get there, how we come to understand these concepts.
Precisely. We spend a lot of time, especially in early education, on concrete words, table, dog, rain. Easy to point to. But abstract words, which are arguably just as important for higher level thinking, often don't get that same focus in terms of how we truly internalize their meaning. It's often just assumed we pick them up.
Which brings us right to the central idea in the article, embodied cognition. Okay, so when we think about a word like, I don't know, honesty or compassion, what does it actually mean for our understanding to be embodied?
Well, at its core, the theory is saying that the meaning isn't just stored up here, like as a definition.
Right, not just words defining words.
Exactly. It suggests that the meaning is actually intertwined with our nonverbal experiences. So what we perceive through our senses, how we physically interact with the world, our sensoromotor experiences.
Moving, touching things.
Yes, and also our emotions, our affective experiences. It's all woven together.
So it's more than just knowing the dictionary definitions, like these words, these abstract concepts. They kind of tap into this whole network of related feelings, maybe even physical sensations, sometimes without us even noticing.
That's exactly it. And the article emphasizes that these nonverbal feelings and sensations, they get elaborated on, shaped, refined by the verbal stuff, both abstract and concrete language we associate with them. So it's this continuous back and forth, this interplay between the physical, the emotional, and the linguistic that builds up a really solid understanding.
Can you give an example, maybe like...
Sure, think about frustration. You can't see frustration itself, but you can probably recall, that feeling of tension, maybe clenching your fists, a tight feeling in your chest.
Yeah, definitely. Or a furrowed brow.
Right. Those are the sensoromotors, the affective experiences that link directly to that abstract concept of frustration. They help give it substance.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like your example earlier, justice. Maybe there isn't one specific action, but you might have a sort of feeling, maybe a sense of balance, or you recall the feeling of unfairness, which is quite visceral. And then you layer on top all the stories, the definitions, the discussions you've heard about justice throughout your life.
That's a perfect illustration. That feeling of balance or the emotional recoil from unfairness, those are the embodied parts, the nonverbal anchors that contribute to your grasp of the abstract concept.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Building on this idea that understanding is rooted in experience, the article talks about developmental psychometric studies.
Yes.
And these studies apparently point to a mutual relationship between nonverbal reasoning skills and the growth of abstract vocabulary. Can you break that down a bit? What does that mutual relationship mean?
Sure. So these studies look at how kids' thinking abilities develop over time, often using specific tests, some verbal, some nonverbal, like puzzles or pattern recognition.
Okay.
And what they find is, well, it seems like as children get better at abstract thinking in general and solving problems without relying on language, their nonverbal reasoning.
Like staple puzzles.
Exactly, things like that. As those skills grow, their understanding and use of abstract words also tends to expand. But, and this is the really fascinating bit, it seems to work the other way too. As their abstract vocabulary gets richer, it actually seems to support and boost their nonverbal reasoning skills.
So they're not just developing side by side in parallel, they're actually feeding each other, like a positive feedback loop.
Precisely. It suggests a kind of synergy. Strengthening one seems to help strengthen the other. It's not just correlation. The idea is there's a causal link, potentially in both directions.
Wow.
The article actually calls this interplay a basis of the developing intellect. It really emphasizes how connected these seemingly different cognitive areas are for overall intellectual growth.
Okay, so learning abstract words isn't just this isolated linguistic skill. It's deeply tied into how our broader reasoning abilities devolve.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Now, the article also touches on, the usual ways we pick up vocabulary. Exposure to rich language, lots of reading, standard stuff.
Right. The things we always hear are important. And they are.
But then it makes this really key point. Direct instruction is also vital for many students. Especially, it seems, for these abstract words. Why is that direct teaching piece so crucial here?
Well, think about it. With concrete words, you often get clues from the physical context. If someone points while saying bird, you get it.
Sure.
But abstract words, because they don't point to tangible things, they can be much harder to just figure out from the surrounding sentences alone. The context might be ambiguous.
Right, you can't just point to democracy or theory.
Exactly. So direct instruction where someone explicitly explains the word, talks about its different shades of meaning, maybe gives clear examples, contrasts it with other words that provides a necessary anchor. It helps build that initial understanding when context alone might not be enough.
That makes total sense. You need someone to sort of explicitly map out the meaning of these less tangible ideas.
For many learners, yes, particularly for complex academic vocabulary.
And the article mentions that there are actually educational programs built around this embodied theory.
Yes, it reviews some interventions.
And apparently they've shown real promise. In teaching academic vocabulary generally, but also abstract words specifically, what might that look like in a classroom? How do you embody abstract concepts?
Well, these interventions often try to make the abstract more concrete, more experiential. So you might see things like using gestures,
Okay.
acting out scenarios that represent the concept, maybe using visual metaphors or symbols. The goal is always to actively engage those nonverbal systems, the sensory, the motor, the emotional, to build a richer, more multi-layered understanding than just a definition would give.
So like instead of just reading a definition of collaboration, maybe students actually have to do a task together and then reflect on the process.
Precisely that. Feeling the give and take, maybe the frustration, the satisfaction, that experience gets linked to the word collaboration.
Or for empathy, maybe doing some role-playing, trying to genuinely understand another person's perspective.
Exactly. And the article suggests that the success these programs have had really underlines the potential of this embodied approach for teaching.
But it's not like it's all figured out yet.
No, definitely not. The article is quite clear in calling for more research needed in both theory and practice, which tells you this is still very much an evolving field.
Right.
We're still figuring out the nuances, the best ways to apply these ideas. So while the embodied perspective offers a really powerful lens, there's still a lot to learn. It's an active area of investigation.
It's interesting, isn't it? Even though the idea feels quite intuitive in some ways, linking concepts to experience, there's still so much complexity to uncover scientifically.
Absolutely.
Now, just briefly, the article's keywords also mention a couple of other theories, dual coding theory and mutualism theory. We don't need a deep dive into those, but why mention them alongside embodied cognition? What's the significance?
Well, I think their inclusion mainly serves to highlight that the embodied view, while central to this specific review, isn't the only way researchers think about vocabulary learning. It's part of a bigger picture. So dual coding theory, for instance, basically suggests we process information through two channels, verbal and nonverbal, like mental images. Learning is stronger when both are engaged.
Like having the word justice and also picturing the scales.
Kind of, yes. And mutualism theory, as we touched on earlier, that emphasizes the reciprocal, mutually beneficial relationships between developing cognitive skills like reasoning and vocabulary feeding each other.
So mentioning these just sort of acknowledges that learning is complex and there are different, sometimes overlapping theoretical lenses to understand it.
Exactly. It paints a richer, more complex picture of how learning happens, not just one single mechanism.
Okay. So let's bring this back to, someone listening who wants to improve their own understanding or help someone else learn. What are the practical takeaways from this embodied perspective? If you're trying to really get a handle on abstract vocabulary, what could you actually do?
Well, based on this theory, one practical thing is to consciously try and connect new abstract words to your own experiences, your own sensory, motor, and emotional life.
How would that work?
So when you encounter a new abstract word, say you read about resilience, don't just memorize the definition. Take a moment. Think. Have I experienced this? Have I seen it in others? What did that feel like?
Oh, okay.
What actions were involved? What emotions came up? Try to link the word to a concrete situation or a felt sense in your own body or memory.
So if the word is perseverance, maybe you actively recall a time you pushed through a really tough project, remembering the feeling of wanting to quit, but also that feeling of determination, the specific actions you took, that helps embed the meaning.
That's the idea, exactly. Actively seeking out those real-world examples, those personal connections, and paying attention to the associated feelings or even physical sensations can help move you beyond just a surface definition. It makes the abstract more concrete in your own mind.
Making it stick better.
Hopefully, yes. Making it more intuitively understood because it's linked to your lived experience.
This has been genuinely fascinating, a really interesting deep dive into how we grapple with these essential but sometimes elusive abstract words.
It's a core part of how we think and communicate.
Definitely. So just to quickly recap the main points for everyone listening, understanding abstract words seems to be about much more than just dictionary definitions.
Right. It appears deeply connected to our nonverbal experiences, sensory, motor, emotional, and also linked to our broader nonverbal reasoning abilities.
And while exposure to language through reading and listening is, of course, important.
Direct instruction, especially instruction that helps forge those embodied connections, seems really vital for truly grasping many of these concepts.
And it's all still an active area of research, constantly evolving.
Yes, we're still learning.
So here's a final thought to maybe mull over. Think about the abstract words you encounter daily. Words like trust, maybe hope, responsibility, curiosity. What nonverbal stuff do they bring up for you?
Any specific sensations, actions, emotions?
Yeah. And could consciously exploring those connections, those sort of embodied links, actually lead you to a deeper, maybe more intuitive understanding of the words themselves and maybe even the world they describe? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.